Yeah, this is how it is. That is what the Vedanta teaches. It does not propose any slipshod remedy by covering wounds with gold leaf, and the more the wound festers, putting on more gold leaf. This life is a hard fact. Work your way through it boldly, though it may be adamantine. No matter, the soul is stronger. It lays no responsibility on little gods. This particular sentence is to be noted. It lays no responsibility on little gods. For you are the makers of your own fortunes. You make yourselves suffer. You make good and evil. And it is you who put your hands before your eyes and say, it is dark. Take your hands away and see the light. You are effulgent. You are perfect already from the very beginning. We now understand the verse. He goes from death to death, who sees the many here. See that one and be free. This is what we were discussing last time. And essentially, what was the gist of it? Essentially, the thing is, and here is where this particular kind of thinking, because it is analytic in nature, because it emphasizes more the rational faculty, clarity of thought, reasoning, rather than a theological, a belief system in some kind of theology. Because of that, here is the key thing. It is not in heavens and hells and other such sundry theological entities that belief is encouraged. What then? I mean, see, usually what happens is the following. Suppose you have something happening to us. We walk out, we meet somebody, meets with an accident, somebody gets something which is a stroke of great good fortune. And we can't really find a good enough explanation for it in the previous things that lead up to it. And just because of the fact that we cannot find a common sense explanation for such phenomena, we then try to say that no, there is a causal chain, we cannot see it, and then come up with fictitious explanations like this is supposed to be some karma, this is supposed to be some previous birth entity, this is supposed to be some gods happening, this is some astrological powers exerting something or the other, etc., and so forth. What's going on, what is common to all of these things is that they are not empirical explanations. They are not explanations based on perceived realities. One might as well believe that, okay, there is a 10-eyed monster on the other side of the galaxy. When it waves its ears, something happens to us here. This kind of fictitious explanations, they might dull our spirit of inquiry for the moment, but they certainly do not provide clear, rational explanations. What then? What is the way out then? And the basic point behind it is something that probably goes back to various clear rational traditions. And certainly there is this story from the Buddha's life. I mean, so suppose somebody is there and an arrow has come and struck that person. You go and start inquiring, which direction did the arrow come from? How many feet away was the person holding the arrow standing, etc., etc. I mean, and all kinds of irrelevant things that have happened. Instead, see a person in pain, what is to be done at the moment is to note that the arrow is there and it has to be removed. The causal chain if it exists, about what led to the arrow entering the person's body is at best of tertiary importance. It is not of relevance to the problem at hand. And so, when we start laying responsibility for our good fortunes or misfortunes on little gods, this is what Vivekananda says, little gods. Essentially, for example, many people have this belief system in astrological powers, etc., etc. What does it do? It deprives us of our virile strength. It emasculates us. It essentially robs us of virility. Instead of taking the situation at hand and doing one's best, one starts relying on all kinds of fictitious things and attributing a causal chain where none is perceived. This just, all that it serves to do is weaken the mind, nothing else. Therefore, something has happened to me. This is a fact. What do we do about it? Okay, so it could be good. How to use it for something greater, larger, that would be the way forward. Or something adverse has happened. How do I handle myself so that it does not throw me off kilter? That would be a simple, common sense way of handling a particular situation. If good comes, fine, let's use it for some larger purpose. If something not so good comes, train myself to handle that situation with strength and fortitude. That would be the common sense way of addressing things. Instead, one starts going into the things that led to that kind of a situation and weaken the mind with superstitions. This habit of the mind which essentially takes us away from the present moment into some fictitious, murky past or some fictitious, equally murky future, this tendency of the mind is being arrested. What is one being expected to do? Hold on to the present moment, see it for what it is. And once that is done, then all these dualities between good and bad, this is the boldness that is being encouraged here. Though it may be adamantine, no matter, the soul is stronger. Again, when one utters the word soul, one starts thinking of all kinds of fictitious, materialistic, imaginary things. It's the essence of one's being, which means, what does it mean in practice? If there is a situation, one introspects, analyzes, and draws from one's inner supply of strength. That's all it means. If it's a situation not getting thrown off kilter by a surrounding situation, which could be good or bad, but looking at it calmly, dispassionately, and using the situation for some greater good. And therefore it lays no responsibility on little gods, for you are the makers of your own fortunes. You make yourselves suffer, you make good and evil. And therefore, what is it? And then he advises, take your hands away. What is the hand? It is this tendency of the mind to manufacture fictitious explanations. Instead of looking at a fact in the face, looking at it boldly, instead of doing that, covering it up with all kinds of stories and explanations which detract from the truth that is present, that is presenting itself to us at this very moment. This covering up by these tendencies of the mind is exactly the hand that covers up the face of truth. Removing that hand is precisely training the mind not to jump around and create fictitious narratives, but to look at the situation at hand with detachment and dispassion. Why do we manufacture these stories? It's because we would like certain things to be true. But things are not true because we like them or dislike them. Things are true. End of story. And it is the business, it's our business to tune our minds to that truth. It is this one value above everything else, truth and universality, that the Vedanta subscribes to. And where this truth? Truth is something, when we say what something is true, volumes have been written on it, and I mean there's this whole business about Khyativada in various schools of Indian philosophy and epistemology in Western philosophy. What is it about? It is about the nature of knowledge and in particular the nature of truth. But you can't define it. And in a certain sense, it is something that is there at the core of our being. But if we are to hold on to it, it is when we try to peel away that which is false. Somebody creating a situation and then creating a straw man argument about it and outraging. Yeah? This is something that very often happens. Somebody has put forward a point of view. For some reason or the other, we do not want to accept that point of view. It is our prejudice that's working. Yeah? And instead of looking at the facts that have been presented to us and analyzing it threadbare, to get at facts, what do? We manufacture some story, which means twist that story around that has been presented to us, create out of that something that is manifestly weak and false, and then put forward our straw man arguments against it. Yeah. Again, there is a tendency of the mind to deviate, veer from the truth, essentially for what purpose? To score brownie points, nothing else. What happens is that we are getting more and more caught in the multifarious. In these stories which have diverse aspects. And what happens is that we are then enmeshing ourselves in this chain of causality. This chain of causality is exactly what this birth and death cycle is about. And so it is being said here, he goes from death to death who sees the many here. This particular verse, this particular sentence, again, as I said, this particular lecture, Unity in Diversity, is really the second half of the Kathopanishad. And he goes from death to death who sees the many here. Mrityosa mrityumapnoti ya iha nana iva pashyati. So, from here, practically through the end of the next paragraph, it's a free rendition of a number of verses from the Kathopanishad. So what we'll do is we'll read out the original verses in Sanskrit, and then we'll come back to the text that is there in Vivekananda's literature, Vivekananda's lecture. So here is this thing, who goes from death to death who perceives many here. Yat yadeveha tadamutra yadamutra tadanviha mrityo sa mrityumapnoti ya iha naneva pashyati. Yat eva iha, whatever is here. Tat amutra, that is there. There meaning what? These things that we are thinking of, oh, there is this such and such a thing, mysterious thing very far away. Where is it really? This mystery is in ourselves. The answer has to be sought by introspecting here, not by some fictitious reality there. Yat eva iha tadamutra, that which we were thinking of as there is really here itself. Yat amutra tat anu iha. Amutra means there. Whatever is there, this here and there, this kind of putting up a distance in our mind is not real. That is what is being stressed. And so, this decreasing of a distant explanations to an immediate thing, an immediate explanation, this is the exercise that is being encouraged. What happens if we don't do it? Mrityo sa mrityum apnoti ya iha nana iva pashyati. If somebody perceives many here, does that mean there are two chairs and we are seeing many? No. Recognizing some essential difference between this and me, that which we refer to ourselves as this and the world as that, separating these two out in a fundamental way is what the manifold vision is about. Looking in this fundamentally dualistic way is about. What does that lead to? It means that this world, as we call it, is really guided by this law of causality. And once we have recognized it, the only framework with which we can catch hold of it is through this chain of causality. In particular, I regard whatever I am myself as something that is caught in this chain of causality, and hence, because it is born, it will die. The logic is fairly simple. If one recognizes diversity, one is really fundamentally making a dichotomy between oneself and the world. Having this belief system that the world as we see it, in essence, is different from me. It's this instinctive recognition of difference that paradoxically puts me inside the world and therefore subject to cause and effect, in particular birth and death. So this world view, this instinctive recognition of this world as separate from me, is really what is at the basis of this idea that I am going to die. So it's, in some sense, it is a common sense explanation. Yeah, it's not something mystical that is being talked about, not something mysterious. It is essentially plumbing the depths of our psyche and coming up with real laws that guide our fundamental thinking. Our usual common sense way of thinking is this kind of duality, this kind of dualistic thinking. The world is one, I am another. As soon as that happens, therefore I am in the world and therefore I will die. So long as I hold on to this view, I am going to be subject to this laws of cause and effect, and hence to the law of birth and death. This is all that is being said here. What then is the way out? The way out then is to not recognize, or to not recognize this fundamental difference that we instinctively grab at, or investigate what is it in us that tells us that this world is something and I am something else. Once we start doing that, there has to be some place, some locus, in which this difference is most recognized. Where is it? In our dealings with other people. And when we start dealing with people and call them other, that's an occasion for us to examine this instinctive belief system that the world is different, I am different. In particular, this person in front of me is a separate person, I am a separate person. And then examine that. Is this person essentially different from me? And then we start recognizing that both of us have the same reactions to pain and pleasure. And we start discovering that there are these objective universal realities which are common to what we call the other and what we call ourselves. It is this recognition of this principle of universality that is at the basis of any scientific endeavor, in particular the treatment of patients in a hospital. The doctor examines and realizes, okay, there are these symptoms, and these can be cured by certain medicines. It does not matter whether the person belongs to groups, one particular group or another. Most of the time, it's this universal treatment that is given. What is the principle behind this discovery of medicine, I mean, as a science today then? It is this recognition of this universally applicable facts. Can we translate this recognition of universality to our day-to-day lives? Not just as an intellectual pursuit, but as a felt reality. Which means when another person comes along, say for example in a hospital as a patient, one recognizes, oh, this person is going through such and such symptoms, such and such afflictions, the person is suffering. I would also suffer equally had I been in that position. Therefore, come up with a solution. It's this, in any kind of serious service activity, what is being recognized is this oneness. Yeah? So, and that becomes then a practical exercise. Once one recognizes that oneness, what happens is that this duality is washed away, and for the time being, we have actually come closer to the truth. Instead, getting some belief system into the head which says, oh no, this person belongs to some other community, because that person belongs to another community, I should hate or be angry or be afraid. What is happening is that we are creating narratives or stories in our head which basically have no connection to reality, on the basis of which, what are we doing? We are emphasizing duality and hence emphasizing death in this particular sense. Whose death? Mine. It's my mortality that is being emphasized by emphasis on duality, by thinking of this person in front of me as the other. Same ideas again emphasized. Manasa eva idam aptavyam. So where is this lack of duality supposed to be perceived? Through the training of the mind. Again, as service, it is this de-recognition of duality, recognizing that the person in front of me is somebody whose essence is mine, is not different from mine. So, manasa eva idam aptavyam. So, the spirit of non-duality is to be caught through the mind alone. So, the mind tunes itself to the non-dual way of thinking and analyzing things. Na iha nana asti kinchana, which means this duality that we perceive is not there in reality. And if we don't do it, what happens? Mrityoh samrityum gacchati ya iha nana iva pashyati. You either do that or you don't. If you don't train yourselves that way, one gets caught again in this mesh of plurality and goes from death to death. This idea of non-duality is going to be emphasized throughout the next few verses. And I'll read out the verses first, and then maybe next time we'll return to the original paragraph from Vivekananda. Yathodakam durge vrishtam parvateshu vidhavati evam dharman prithak pashyan taneva anuvidhavati. This is a companion verse. Yathodakam shuddhe shuddham asiktam tadrigeva bhavati evam muner vijanata atma bhavati gautama. Beautiful. I mean, these are the last two verses of the first canto of part 2 of the Kathopanishad. Yathodakam, yatha, as, udakam, water, durge, in mountains, vrishtam, having come down as rain, parvateshu vidhavati, flows down the mountain in different streams, evam dharman prithak pashyan. So also, dharman, meaning trends and things which hold us together, perceiving that as different. what happens? Taneva anuvidhavati. One becomes committed to the multifarious, and because of this grasp of the multifarious on ourselves, what happens? One is going again from death to death. What is the opposite of this to be cultured? Yatha udakam shuddhe shuddham. As water after being purified, in pure water when it falls, asiktam, tadrik eva bhavati. It merges with that completely. Pure water falls into water and there is no difference left. Evam muner vijanata. Similarly, the wise person, having known this, evam muner vijanata, atma bhavati gautama. This non-dual reality, which means recognizing the same essence inside this multifarious perceptions that we have, that understanding, that undivided, unified perception is what the knowledge of the Atman is really supposed to be about. It's a recognition of non-duality as the essence of one's being, and recognition that one is not in essence different from this world. This goes on, and where is that then? Again, this non-duality is going to be emphasized. Hangsa shuchishat vasurantarikshasat hota vedishat atithir duronasat nrishat varasat ritasat vyomasat abja goja ritaja adrija rutam brihata. It's in everything. That's what is being emphasized. Shuchishat, in the pure. Vasu, antariksha, in the sky. Hota, in the person that is offering oblations into the fire. Vedi, on the altar on which the offerings are being offered. Atithi, in the guest. Durona, I mean basically the utensils in which food is kept, etc. Nishat, in human beings. Nrishat, Varasat, in the great people, Ritasat, Vyomasat, in the sky, in truth, in Abja, in that which is born of water, Goja, Ritaja, that which is born of truth, Adrija, Ritam Brihat. Essentially, anytime we see something or there is some reality that is perceived, go deep enough and that same reality is going to be there. This is what is being talked about. Again, how is it that diversity manifests to us? Agnir yathaiko bhuvanam pravishto rupam pratirupo babhuva ekas tatha sarvabhutantaratma rupam pratirupo bahishcha. Agnir yathaiko bhuvanam pravishta. Just as the one self-same fire enters into the world. Agnir yatha ekam. As the one fire. Bhuvanam pravishto. Entering into the world. Rupam pratirupo babhuva. Appears as multifarious in different ways in the world. Ekas tatha, in the same way. It's the one thing. Sarva bhuta antaratma. Yeah? The essence of the being of all that exists. Rupam pratirupo bahishcha. It, in the same way, this same reality, it manifests itself in different forms. Yeah? In one form in one person, in another form in another person, in some forms in some eccentric form in some very sane form in another, etc., etc. But the emphasis being Agner yathaikam bhuvanam pravishto rupam pratirupo babhuva ekas tatha sarvabhutantaratma rupam pratirupo bahishcha. Here the simile is being given in terms of the fire. Yeah? The same simile again is going to be given in terms of wind or air. Vayur yathaiko bhuvanam pravishto rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva ekastatha sarva bhutantaratma rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa. Vayur yathaiko. Vayu is air or wind. Vayu yatha eko. Yeah, this principle of the wind or breeze is the same reality. Yatha eko. But in this world, bhuvanam pravishta, once it enters the world, what happens? Rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva. It appears as a strong wind here and a mild wind there, is a strong breeze on the seas and a mild breeze somewhere else. Ekas tatha sarva bhutanta. Just as the same breeze principle, the same principle of air appears as multifold, multifarious, so also ekas tatha sarva bhuta antaratma. So also the essence of one's being, rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa. It's the same thing which is manifesting as this person, that person, the chair, the table, etc., etc. Yeah? That which is real about me is that which is real about the world. This is the fundamental level at which duality is being attacked and removed. Okay. But then we recognize this duality, is what is being said. How is it that we then recognize good, bad, pleasant, unpleasant, all this duality? How is it that we do it? If this reality is the one thing that is there, then how is it that it sometimes comes up as bad and sometimes comes up as good? The next verse answers this query. It says basically it's not affected. These ideas are constructs of our mind and they should be removed. The mind needs to be deconditioned. Suryo yatha sarva lokasya chakshuhu. Just as the sun is as if it is the eye of the world. That means it is through light everything is perceived. That's the principle that is being talked about. Na lipyate chakshushai bahya doshai. So if I develop a cataract and I see the sun as dim, the sun is not affected. So, ekas tatha sarva bhutantaratma. So also, this essence of one's being manifest as so many people around me, na lipyate, does not get stuck, does not get affected by what? Loka dukkhena bahyaha. By these afflictions of our life. What is being said is that these things are superficial, external things. Once you perceive them by dispassionately viewing them, they lose their grasp as something very real and very valuable in our lives. We come across a situation and then we suddenly become highly elated. And the next moment that elation has given rise to exhaustion. Or something overpowers us with grief. And then after a few days we learn to look at it with dispassion and it ceases to exert its influence on us. What has happened is that the mind has developed a capacity for this dispassion, for this detachment, and is no longer affected by these external conditions of joy and sorrow. Eko vashi sarva bhutantaratma ekam rupam bahudha yah karoti tamatmastham yenu pashyanti dhiraha tesham sukham shashvatam na itaresham. But then we seek joy. And how is it to be done then? Eko vashi sarva bhutantaratma ekam rupam bahudha karoti. Once one starts perceiving that self-same reality in these multifarious things, seen as part and parcel of one's own being, tam atmastham ye anupashyanti dhiraha. He with a steady mind once one perceives that it is from the core of one's being that all these multifarious things spring forth, what happens? Tesham sukham shashvatam. To such a being does real, eternal or unconditional joy belong, not to others. Nityo anityanam Chetanash chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman tamatmastham yenu pashyanti dhiraha tesham shanti shashvati na itaresham tat etat iti manyante anirdeshyam paramam sukham katham tu tad vijaniyam kimuvati vibhati va न तत्र सूर्यो भान्ति न चंद्र तारका निमा विद्युतो भान्ति कुतोयमग्निः तमेव भान्तम् अनुभाति सर्वं तस्य भासा सर्वम idam vibhati. It's a very poetic last 4 verses of the second canto of the second chapter. Let's just read these once more and we'll finish off. एको वशी सर्वभूतांतरात्मा एकम रूपम बहुधायः करोति तमात्मस्थं येनु पश्यन्ति धीराः तेषां सुखम शाश्वतम नेतरेषाम्. See, essentially the quest for joy or happiness needs to go through this quest for unity. That was what was said there. The second one is a quest for peace. Same thing that is being done. Nityo anityanam. In the middle of the ephemeral or transitory, he who sees the unchanging. Chetana achetanana. So in the midst of all these unconscious things, this chair, table, this other physical form of the person, one who recognizes chetana, the conscious reality. Eko bahunam. One amongst the many. Yo vidadhati kaman. From where springs forth the satisfaction of all wishes. Tam atmastam. Yeah, since this multifarious causal links, when they are traced to one's own being. Tam atmastam. When one sees these things as springing forth from the core of one's being. Ye anupashyanti dhiraha. He who is with undisturbed mind, who perceives the cause of all this multifariousness as something springing forth by the powers of the mind from one's own heart. What happens to such a person? Tesham shantihi. Such a person attains to peace. Na itaresham. Not when one perceives multifariousness. Tad etat iti manyamte anirdeshyam paramam sukham. Once one perceives there's this unqualified joy, indescribable. Katham tu tad vijaniyam kimubhati vibhati va. And then it is not expressible in terms of this causal chain which was our binding to the world. It's inexpressible. Does it express itself or does it not? All these logical dualities vanish at that stage. And to emphasize that, na tatra suryo bhati, the sun does not shine there, na chandra tarakam, not the moon nor the stars, na ima vidyuto bhanti, not even the lightning, kuto ayam agnihi, not even the fire, tam eva bhantam. It is, see, basically our minds react to light as something that is effulgent, attractive. And what is this doing? It is tracing the source of the recognition of that effulgence, not in the external life, but to the core of one's being, the self-manifest consciousness in the form of expressing itself in the form of knowledge. Na ima tameva bhantam. It is only when this principle of conscious recognition that is there in our hearts spring forth, that even this external lights in the form of the sun, the moon, the stars and lightning, those appear lighted. Tasya bhasa sarvamidham vibhati. It is this principle of consciousness in ourselves that in specific forms gives rise to the light in the moon, the light in the sun, the light in the lightning, the light in the fire. In other words, this it's not this gross light that we are talking about, but asking for what really is at the essence of this perception of light, this subjective registering that, oh, this is all clear now. Where does it come from? Is it in the external light? No. If we close our eyes, it's not there. But then, do we not have a cognition of ourselves when we close our eyes? Yes, it is there. That was there when we opened our eyes, that is there when we close our eyes. That principle of consciousness is to be caught hold of at the core of our being by quieting the mind and allowing this self-effulgent consciousness to suffuse our mind so that it washes away this habit of perceiving divisions between people and people, divisions between religion, one organized religion and another, division between that which we perceive as living and that which we perceive as not. So this is a passionate defense of non-duality at its best, and we'll come back to this next time by reading Vivekananda's free translation of this. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.